Hello and welcome in to this week's edition of The Walkthrough. I am your host, Intern Joe. It is a jam-packed episode today. It is a big weekend in Gamecock athletics. Lot to talk about. Obviously, Gamecock Baseball opening weekend clean sweep. And as I close that off, live TV, love it. Big weekend for Gamecock Baseball, and then Gamecock women's basketball also surviving. Men's basketball, some question marks from the week. We will talk about that as well. But first, let me get the sponsors to you guys. First off, for our sponsor, it is tax season, so we're going to talk about our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Tax ID is an uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call on the tax team at Liberty Tax. They're fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs. And our second sponsor of the day is our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. He's above us on all of our Gamecock Central live programming. He's the man. You need help with your mortgage, give our good friend Clint a call. He's of the Movement Mortgage Network. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003, which allows him to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to the complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important than a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with five-star customer service. He's even helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and former Gamecock quarterback Perry Worth with their mortgages. So give our Clint a call. He's above us on all of our Gamecock Central live programming. Like I said, 803-771-6933. Once again, 803-771-6933. So, like I mentioned, a very big game or very big weekend for South Carolina athletics. Baseball team off to a roaring hot start. And to talk about it all, I'm bringing in our colleague at Gamecock Central, Mr. Jack Veltri. Jack, pretty good start for Gamecock baseball.
Yeah, I think it was. It was a fun weekend of baseball. Was there for all three games, and Joe, I'm happy you brought me on so we could talk some baseball finally. Right, we could finally talk about what was a eventful weekend. Right, you had opening day, Saturday, Sunday. Obviously, today was the big day with Roman Kimball making his long-awaited return after 609 days after his last college appearance because he had Tommy John. And then obviously the offensive outburst today and then the no-hitter. But, let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there was quite a bit to talk about from today, but we're going to start on opening day, 5-1 finish. Eli Jones, 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 earned run, and 1 hit batsman. Pretty darn good from your opening day starter, wouldn't you say, Jack?
Totally. I think you always knew, at least I knew in my head that was going to be the guy for opening day. It just felt like the clear-cut option. And he certainly proved to be the man for this team, the Friday night guy that this rotation desperately needed. Like you said, I think in the early going, the first inning, he kind of, I think, struggled a little bit, but then I think that was just came down to jitters and stuff and the pressure of pitching on opening day. But once you get through that first inning where he allowed that 1 run, he really settled in nicely. And I think that was kind of a common trend with most of these guys that started this weekend. I think once Jones got through that first inning, it was like he was on. And, I mean, his stuff was really freaking good. And I think it set the tone for the offense to do a little bit. Not anything crazy on Friday, but it was enough to get the win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you have to give credit to where credit is due. The bats, didn't do a whole lot in terms of, the long ball or a lot of scoring. But again, it was, the pitching and defense, that we would expect, right, to lead an opening day. Kingston, obviously the whole story throughout the fall is, that the pitchers were catching up to the hitters, right? It was big for this pitching staff to go out hot. Eli Jones, again, the right man for the job to lead him out there. And then I also did want to talk about on the pitching staff, Chris Veach and then Garrett Gainey. Veach came in a really, really tough spot and was able to get the job done, right? The junkyard dog came in a little early, but did his job, right? Put out the fire when he needed.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's an interesting point that you brought up, the whole bringing him in, closer type thing. The thing with South Carolina is while Chris Veach might be the quote unquote closer, that doesn't take away from his ability to pitch multiple innings. He's not just a one trick pony. He's not a one inning guy. I mean, he can go 40 pitches if you really need him to. I mean, I think I saw him a few times last year where he'd throw like 50 pitches and be fine. So that's a real benefit. And Mark Kingston kind of made it clear, like, when it comes down to it, when push comes to shove, they're throwing the best guys, and it's kind of just all hands on deck at that point. And with Veach, obviously on opening day, I mean, he got thrown right into the fire, right? Because Eddie Copper, the freshman, who I think had been very impressive in scrimmages.
Oh yeah,
Can't remember the exact situation, but he got into some trouble in the after Jones came out of the game, and immediately, I mean, Matt Williams came right out of the dugout and went to make a pitching change and brought in Veach early. So with that said, Veach came in and did his job. I think it was a bases loaded jam he got out of.
It was, yeah,
in his first inning with no outs, and then in his next inning just did Chris Veach type things. Right. This is I made the joke that this is like a Houdini act. So maybe that should be his new nickname instead of the Junkyard Dog. But who knows, right? And then with the second guy, Gainey, man. I mean, I don't know who brings more energy, quite honestly. Veach, obviously, as we know, lots of emotion, rah, that kind of thing. And then with Gainey, I didn't know much about him because obviously he's a Liberty transfer and stuff, new to the scene and all that. And then I know, like, someone showed me a video after the game of, Gainey closed out the game. He got a strikeout or whatever to finish it, or whatever the case might have been after the last out. And he's like, going off, like, I don't even know how to describe it. He was like just freaking out, like pointing at like the Miami, Ohio dugout and stuff. It was nuts. I mean, it's crazy that you have another guy like that who can bring that type of energy. But at the same time, with what he does on the baseball field, he's a left-handed arm. I think that's another good back of that bullpen type arm that you really want, and it's a left-handed option. So if you're in a matchup where you have two lefties and a righty hitter coming up, you can make the call to the bullpen and throw Gainey in there, and it works out perfectly because lefty on lefty, that's an ideal matchup. So yeah, I mean, those two, the whole bullpen, I think this weekend was for the most part really impressive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I brought up Gainey because he was really impressive. Got the save too. Was hitting 96 with his fastball. That's another guy to look out for to be a potential fireman out of the bullpen. If paired with Veach, if Veach can't throw, I think Garrett Gainey is certainly etching his name up for the closer number 2 or fireman number 2 in line from Veach. So I think that was big. I've liked how this team drew a lot of walks. Obviously, today, the 14-0 game, there were quite a bit of walks. But again, on opening day, you saw the plate discipline early. Cole Messina drew 2 himself. Jack, walk me through a little bit what you're seeing with the plate discipline with these guys.
Yeah, and we can, this is a whole weekend kind of answer, because I know we're talking about Friday, but I think they only hit 2 homers this weekend, which is obviously one of the main questions coming into this year. I think we had a question last week was, are they going to be more, homer happy? Are they going to be focusing on small ball? What's kind of the deal? I think we said that it was kind of going to be a mixture because you can't deny that there's home run hitters in this lineup. You have a few guys that can definitely hit some bombs on this team. But this weekend, I mean, the only guy to go deep was Ethan Petrie, and we'll talk about him, obviously. But what you're seeing from this team is you're taking a lot of pitches. You're kind of think of it like basketball, how the men's team looks for the right shot, right? They make a ton of passes, and they drain the shot clock, and then they find their shot. It's kind of like that with this baseball team, right? Because they they usually don't swing first pitch. They take their pitches, draw walks, move runners over. It's a whole thing. And the more pitches you see, the more you're gonna know. Okay, like the more you're gonna be ready for what's to come with whoever's on the mound. So I think it really serves them well. And I mean, Friday, they drew 7 walks, which is really nice to see. And like you said, Joe, Cole Messina had 2. So I mean, walks. I mean, it's been a big thing. And I mean, today it led to a ton of runs. So you have to be happy with what you're seeing in regards to the plate discipline.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as we go, you brought up the 2 home runs. We transition into Friday. Pretty big day for the offense, no?
Yeah, Saturday was a awesome day for South Carolina's offense because
Saturday,
you know
yeah.
Friday 5-run inning in the second, and then that was it. Right? You had two bases loaded situations where you should have gotten some runs, but you didn't. And I think Mark Kingston kind of put it best after the game on Friday with those situations. He knows, he said, okay, I mean, we didn't get hits, we didn't get runs in those situations, but
Yep.
guess what? As the season goes on, we're going to get runs. So I totally think he's right on that. It was game one. It happens. With game two, you had a few innings where you had some runs, right? Miami, Ohio goes up 1-0 again. And then immediately after, what does South Carolina do? They put up a 4 spot in the next inning. And it's because of these timely hits. It's not the 3-run homer or whatever the case might be. It's just getting these hits and moving runners over and doing the little things right. And then obviously, Ethan Petrie doing what he does
Mhm.
in the third inning on Saturday. I mean, we were talking about, is he going to hit a sophomore slump after a hitless day on Friday? And then what does he do? It's like he's swinging a or I don't even know how to describe it. It's just,
Yeah.
it's effortless. It's effortless. The ball he hit his first at bat, it carried like crazy. You would think it was just a line drive, but it ends up hitting the trees in the outfield next to the home bullpen, and it goes 420 feet, 114 miles per hour off the bat. That's who Ethan Petrie is. And then in the fifth inning, he hits a not as deep home run, but it's a line drive that just carries out in a second. It's what he does. I mean, he is the heart and soul of this offense, and I think South Carolina goes as far as he goes. But the good thing is they have so many pieces around him that can play to his strengths, right? Obviously, Petrie's the power guy, but you also have Cole Messina. Gavin Cassis is the 8-hole hitter on this team.
Crazy.
Just think about that for a second. Even despite him not having a great weekend, Gavin Cassis is your 8-hole hitter. He's hitting behind Dylan Brewer and ahead of Will Tippett. That just shows you how deep this team really is offensively. And it's crazy to think about. I think this is probably, I kept saying it over the weekend. This is probably their best 1 through 9 lineup. I think they ran out the same all 3 games. And look, I think over time we're going to see more runs and stuff and more consistency instead of these big, 5-6 run innings. And that's it. I think you're going to see just, I don't know. It's crazy to think about that. Gavin's your 8-hole hitter. And it's like this team is really, really balanced. I feel like you have a true leadoff hitter. You have a really imposing middle of the order. And then you're 7-8-9 with Dylan Brewer, who, in my opinion, might have had the best, outside of Ethan Petrie, I think might have had the best offensive weekend that we're not talking about enough. And then Will Tippett, obviously, is your 9-hole hitter. So, I mean, it's a long-winded answer. And I'm not even sure if I
Yeah.
truly answered the question, but it's just there's so much to talk about with this offense. And it's,
Yeah.
11 runs on Saturday. That was more in line with what you would expect.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was alive and well indeed. They really, really made a push to just put the ball in play, right? I think, Friday they came out a little flat, and then Saturday the bats were awoken at South Carolina. So that was big. Transitioning into today's game, Jack, the sweeper, that's why I got the broom out. 14-0. You run rule Miami of Ohio. It's good to get a run rule in opening weekend. Yeah, talk me through what happened today. I mean, they were on the base pass quite a bit. 16 walks today.
They had, I want to say it was, I think they had 6 walks in the first inning, which is insane. Again, their plate discipline, it's really, really, really good. They don't. I mean, yeah, okay. There were some at bats today, this entire weekend, where even guys like Ethan Petrie swinging at garbage pitches on 1-2, 2-2 counts. That's going to happen. Guys have some guys have nasty stuff. But overall, I mean, like you said, Joe, the amount of walks they had today was just, it was really big. And I think it led to a ton of their runs because they had a lot of bases loaded situations. And then you draw a walk and it's like, okay, another run scores. And I mean, kudos to South Carolina. Look, I know it's Miami, Ohio. I know it's not, your LSUs, your Floridas of the world, whatever the case might be. But to get a weekend like this where you get to really show, okay, what Joey Holcomb and Monty Lee have been able to do together, I think we're seeing it. I think this is what this team is going to be. Obviously, they're going to hit their home runs. There's no doubt. Once May and April hit, the ball is going to be flying out of here. But the fact that they can, Blake Jackson and Parker Nolan can get on base and move into scoring position pretty easily, and then you have your meat of the order doing big things. I think it just shows that there's not a weak, there's not an easy out in this lineup.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for the starters, again, Jack, we talked about this a little bit on foul balls, but the non-con is for experimenting in the lineup, and for the starters to draw as many walks as they did, that's one of the things that's how you stay in the lineup if they're not giving you pitches to hit, right? And this lineup, it's really hard. A lot of these guys in this lineup, Petry is rarely going to get thrown to. Gavin Casas as well. So they're not going to see a whole lot of pitches that they like, right? So if these guys are in the lineup the way they are, and they want to stay in the lineup, they're going to have to take walks. And I think we saw up and down the roster complete and utter execution to it. Nobody was really swinging for the fences. They waited for their pitch. Again, I think that's something Monty Lee has stressed out over the last couple of years, is just the ability, wait for your pitch. They're going to have to pitch to you eventually, or else, you'll take the free pass and then it adds up like it does today. So very, very good to get a run rule. Blake Jackson, impressed today. He's done a great job at the top of the lineup. Again, somebody we talked about on foul balls as somebody who, his name didn't really stand out in the transfer class. You weren't really saying, oh, this kid's going to go in and make an immediate impact. But Blake Jackson got here in the fall, had a really good fall, and then also put it together in the spring as well, which is why he's leading off. And everyone inside the building is has been really impressed with him so far.
Totally. He had 3 walks today. He didn't even have a hit, which is the craziest part. I think that is what you want out of a leadoff hitter, right? Someone that's the first guy up, he's seeing 6, 7 pitches, and then, the guys behind him can kind of get a feel of, okay, what's this guy going to throw here? What's that? What's this? All that. And then the thing with Jackson is, I'm positive, I'm sure I can't remember exact numbers, but he stole some bags this weekend, right? He was moving over and stuff, doing his typical type of thing that you want out of a leadoff hitter. But yeah, just him. Parker Nolan had 2 walks today. It's just getting the transfers that they have in the starting lineup, those 2 specifically, I think are making such a difference. And I think that's something that last year's team was kind of missing, right? I think, no disrespect to Braylon Wimmer or Will McGillis, but I think of those guys as more of, double extra base hit kind of guys, not your prototypical leadoff hitters that are going to do the small ball, bunt, that sort of thing. Those are more power heavy guys. With this team, now you have those 2 that can kind of balance out the power and threat that they can do with the long ball. And I think it really meshes well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then Craig brings up Lee Croy played solid at third base as well. Yeah, absolutely. Lee Croy was nails, and there were a lot of good defensive plays across the board. No real complaints defensively all weekend. So, like Jack, like we were talking about on foul balls, it's something you needed to do. Is no real errors defensively. So yeah, no real complaints.
Yeah, Friday was a little sloppy.
Yeah,
A little sloppy.
there were a couple plays.
Yeah. Let's hold the gun on Lee Croy, because I think he had an error on Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
But
better today though.
Better today. They didn't have a single error today.
Yeah.
And that should always be the goal, right? You had 2 on Friday, 1 on Saturday, and 0 on Sunday. That should always be the goal. Play a clean baseball, and obviously that's why they got the no-hitter today, right? Because they, kept played a very solid game defensively for 7 innings. But look, this defense, I think it's again, it's just like the offense. I think this is one of your better groups out there. I think I like Cassis at first. Lee Croy is probably my biggest concern in the infield, but I think he's going to work out well. I think you saw Will Tippett and Parker Nolan make some good plays in the middle of the infield there.
Mm-hmm.
Really showing their range and motion and stuff. And then Ethan Petry, I think, he belongs in right field. when I think of Ethan Petrie, it's like Aaron Judge, manning down right field in the Bronx. It kind of reminds me of that. And then obviously Dylan Brewer's defense has been pretty good, and same thing with Blake Jackson. So overall, I mean, no errors today. That was probably a big takeaway that we're not talking about enough.
No, yeah, I agree. And again, Leroy got progressively better through the rest of the weekend. Jack, I think everyone was just sloppy on Friday. A lot of teams around the country as well. But I did want to talk about the pitching staff. Just overall, as a staff, was really, really, really good this weekend. Obviously, got the combined no-hitter today, which was huge. But, I mean, from start to finish, just utter execution from these guys.
Totally. Where do you even begin, honestly, right?
Yeah.
Friday, Eli Jones, as we said before, balls to the wall, really good. No complaints there. Saturday, Dylan Eskew. My biggest thing with him, and this is kind of for the entire rotation, walks, right? He had a few, walks, I think, in the early going of that Saturday game. I think he had 48 pitches through 2 innings. But then you really see him step it up in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, where he doesn't allow another, he just 9 up, 9 down the rest of the way, and he's able to get the win. So that was super impressive, and he limited the walks. And then today, with your combined no-hitter, right, Roman Kimball finally back, pitched 2 good innings. I think the one thing with Kimball today was the walks, but at the same time, you got to understand, he's come back from Tommy John. Control is kind of something that you can get back over time. I think it'll happen. I mean, he had 3 walks today, but he also had 5 strikeouts. So it's good to see that he's just back, and at the same time looked pretty filthy, all things considered. And then Ty Good, I mean, this was a guy that, who knew what was going to happen with him? He was probably I thought he was going to be a starter at some point, maybe a midweek guy, who knows? But he came out of the bullpen today, 2 shutout innings, no hits. I think he had 2 strikeouts, and Mark Kingston was saying after the game that that's the type of Ty Good he had been hearing about, and I think that's the pitcher, the CAA pitcher of the year that we all heard about, but now we're kind of seeing it brought to life. So I think he's thriving right now, and then you're getting a lot of young guys in there, and look, some of them are going to get their feet wet and struggle a little bit, but at the same time, others are going to thrive, and this is, like we said last week on Foul Balls, this is where you're going to find out who your guys are, who you can kind of depend on. And the more pitchers that you have that can go out there and get outs, the better off you're going to be. Because it's like, hey, if one guy's not doing it, let's bring in another.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I was also impressed, with the whole staff really throughout the weekend. Dylan Eskew was one of them that, I had my fair share, like I'm sure the rest of Gamecock Nation did, because, he was kind of thrown in there for Matthew Becker, because Becker would have been the 2 slot, but Eskew, stood on his head, really. He pitched a really good game. 5 innings, 1 hit, 1 run. That one not earned, 4 walks and 6 strikeouts. Certainly proving his worth. And then also, he could possibly, be the guy that sneaks into the starting rotation. I don't think the starting rotation is far from over. Obviously, Becker, will have his time to, state his name and state his claim to the starting rotation. But Roman Kimball pitched also really darn good today. He went 2 innings, but that was planned, as we know. Yes. And Jack, I know you wrote a big feature about him, but yeah, talk to me about, Eskew, Becker, and then we'll finish off with Kimball.
So I disagree with you on what you say about Eskew being kind of just thrown in there. I think he was going to get into the rotation.
Oh, he earned it for sure. I didn't necessarily mean it.
No,
like that.
I know what you meant. I know what you meant.
Yes.
So yeah, don't think that's a slight or anything. Yeah. But anyway, look, Eskew, he earned his rotation spot. He pitched well in the fall and in scrimmages and stuff. So totally deserved. And I think the biggest question with him is that he never made a start at South Carolina before, right? Because he was sparingly used last year, to say the least. He was on the back burner kind of, but after those first 2 innings, he was nails, because I mean, he had 48 pitches through 2 innings, finished the day with 80. So that is really, really good stuff right there. And then Kimball, I mean, look, I just touched on it before, but 2 innings. Look, that was the plan going into the day. About 40. I think he had like 40 pitches, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. Sure. Would he like back some walks? Was the zone a little bit tight, maybe? Yeah, but when you see a 5 strikeout day, and I mean the first 2 batters of the game, he froze those Miami, Ohio hitters with some really nice off-speed stuff in the zone. And so when he's back, like, it's crazy to think about what he's going to be like when he's able to go out there, whatever day he's starting, throw 100 pitches, and if that's what he's going to be like, so that's a really good Sunday starter. So
yeah, exactly. And we talked about it like during foul balls, right? You need a guy that is emotional to go out there and get you a series win if you need it on Sunday. And Roman Kimball was all that and more. I mean, he got it done. He probably, like, if it were up to him, he probably would have gone at least the whole game, seeing that it was a run rule. But he obviously had the lat, to work on. So, he had to cut it short a little bit. But yeah, no, that's all you want and more. And, congratulations to him too. It's been quite a long time since he's pitched in a collegiate game, and to come out and do that in a school like South Carolina, he's certainly earned his right to remain where he's at in the weekend rotation.
Totally. And just want to say up front, man, I had the best time writing this. If y'all haven't checked out this long form story I did on Roman and the whole 2-year kind of journey coming back, would love for y'all to read it. If you haven't yet, it's a great story. And I appreciate anyone that's, texted me saying it's a great story or reached out to me, whatever the case might be. But yeah, man, I mean, this guy's been on a roller coaster, and, it's crazy because the last time he pitched in a college baseball game was in Omaha in the College World Series. And obviously circumstances were different because, after that season at Notre Dame, his coach leaves and his pitching coach goes to Navy and stuff. So he's in a bind, and, obviously he comes to Carolina, and, I think he would have loved to pitch last year, but that wasn't the case. And now he's earning his spot. I think over time, I think Kingston said today that his pitch count will go up in 15 to 20 pitch increments moving forward. So let's see, if he threw 40 pitches today, you're looking at maybe 55, 65 pitches, next Sunday, if he pitches next Sunday or whatever the case might be. But from those 2 innings, man, I mean, you saw the chatter. I mean, Joe, I know you saw the chatter on Twitter. That's from 2 innings, man. I mean, many people were talking about him and what he can do. And I wasn't even 100% of what Roman.
No, not at all.
This is a guy that can be a Friday night starter if things kind of pan out that way. And then last guy I talk about, Matthew Becker. I got a little update on him today. Kingston kind of hinted at maybe he's going to pitch this weekend, maybe not. I had heard otherwise, that, it was rest and recovery and he's not going to pitch or whatever. And obviously he didn't this weekend, which is probably the smart idea. But he threw a bullpen today, and apparently Becker was feeling really good in that bullpen and stuff. So we'll see what happens. The person I talked to was kind of saying that maybe he gets tossed into a midweek game potentially, just because that's kind of the way the comparison was made was like, okay, obviously he's thrown his first bullpen. The next step would be like a sim game, whatever the case might be. Throwing him into a midweek game against, like Winthrop or Queens this week would kind of be the same thing, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Similar. And then from there, maybe like an inning or two in that. And then after that, maybe he's good to go for, a weekend start. Obviously, maybe not next weekend, but maybe the weekend after. But this is just all hypothetical and just from what we're hearing. But I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have guys. This is the big question going into this year. What's this rotation going to be? What's this pitching staff going to be? They were really good this weekend, and I think if it kind of keeps on this track, who knows, man? The sky's the limit.
Yeah, you just need him to stay healthy again. Knock on wood, there for you. But yes, Garrett Gainey out of the bullpen everywhere. I mean, Javara Martin, for as young as he is, and as rocky as he was, you still saw some light there. So there were a lot of guys that came out of the bullpen, did well. And so, you should have a lot of faith in your pitching staff after this weekend.
Totally. You got, let's see, 4 guys came in relief on Saturday. Today, obviously with the no-hitter, you had 4 guys come in relief. So that's 8 right there. And then with Friday, if I can find it, you had 12 guys get into, relief situations this weekend. That is really good case scenario for South Carolina, that you're able to get in so many pitchers and see how they do. Obviously, there were guys who struggled, like I said, and you were able to pull the plug on them immediately, and then plug in new guys. Like Javar Martin struggled. Eddie Copper struggled. It happens, right? They'll get more chances. There's no doubt. I think this week with midweeks, we're going to kind of see Kingston kind of hinted at that he hasn't named a weekend or a midweek starter yet. I would be under the assumption we're kind of seeing something like today where you're having a guy go 2 innings and then throw it off to the next guy. Because that's kind of ultimately what you should be doing, right? You don't need, unless you have a bona fide 4th starter that just didn't make the cut for the weekend rotation, then pitch him. But obviously, get as many guys as you can in there. But yeah, so I think overall, you got to be happy with what you saw out of your relievers this weekend. Again, today was just like the icing on the cake of, okay, this is what they can do when everyone is kind of on their game.
Yeah, most def. Really, really good up and down look at the baseball series. Jack, any final thoughts on this?
Let's see. We talked hitting. Again, this lineup I think is one of your best looks. Dylan Burr going 3 for 8 this weekend, 5 ribbies. That's really solid. And like I said, man, like the fact, like it blows my mind. Like Gavin Cassis, who probably on some teams could be your 3 to 4 hole hitter. The fact that he's hitting 8th, that's insane. It's like having an all-star team, and it's like, oh yeah, Gavin Cassis for all-star first baseman is just hitting 8th. That's it's just weird to think about. And then you got some guys in there off the bench today that I think played particularly well. Kennedy Jones finally got in there this weekend. I think played pretty well. Ryan Bakes was out there, guys like that. And just like the pitching, right? I think you have the depth offensively to plug and play. And if someone's not doing particularly well, then it's okay. Or if someone gets hurt, next man up. And I think you'll feel pretty confident. So we got a long way to go. 53 more games to go, if I'm not mistaken, in the regular season. And it's gonna be a fun year, man.
Yeah, should be a pretty fun year. Jack, there is a little bit of Gamecock hoops to talk about before we get out of here. So obviously not the best week of Gamecock hoops. The men's team losing both their contests, the women's team struggling at Tennessee, but finding a way back, and then also struggling again at home today, but also getting the job done. You want to talk about the women's team, I guess, because they're winning.
We'll talk about both teams. I think it's important to air it out with this men's week because I'm sure a lot of fans are feeling frustrated about kind of what they saw, and I think maybe they need a voice of reason. Who knows? But
yeah, absolutely.
Women's. I think from what I briefly saw today, with obviously they were trailing at halftime today, right? Look, it's not going to be – look, I know this is the number 1 team in the country, undefeated, really good group, all this and that. But the way they've been able to respond, right, I think today was a good example of that, okay? You have College Game Day coming to town, all the ABC, all the national attention on you against a team that's bottom of the SEC. And you're trailing at halftime, not playing your best basketball, and then you're able to go out there in the second half and you're able to win by double digits. I think that really speaks to the level of play that this team has. And then I think the big thing that I've kind of noticed just from kind of watching a little bit is getting Cardoso back. I think because she was with Team Brazil, is that right?
Brazil, yep.
Yeah, so I think she was a noticeable loss because that's one of your starters, and obviously going to play with a national team is something that I feel like is pretty hard to turn down. I also get it. Like okay, like I understand both sides of the coin, right? Because you should stay with your team that you're playing with to compete for a national championship. But at the same time, how often are you gonna get to go play with your country? So I think that's I mean, it was good. It was a good opportunity for her that I don't think she could have passed down. But now that she's back, I think this team sorely missed her a little bit, and they were able to make it work without her, but it wasn't always pretty. And now that you got her back, it's another weapon added to your roster. I mean, she had 16 points today on 5 of 10 shooting, and yeah, I mean the one thing I will say about today that I'm noticing, look at the stat line. Oh, and Cardoso also had 16 rebounds. Let's not forget that. But 64% from the line, not great. I think you could be a little better there. 3-point shooting, 9 of 27 today, not great. But again, the difference in this game, in my opinion, was that third quarter where you go on a 22-9 run and you're able to completely just change the dynamic of the game, right? And not give any breathing room for Georgia to come back and make it a game again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, getting Cardoso back was big. Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks winning a SEC record 43 straight conference games. That's pretty darn ridiculous. And again, to be able to battle back, Jack, these are essentially losses, right, for this team. This team has always been to the point where they're so good that, they're going to need an almost loss to reset things, right? Because I don't know if they're good enough to lose, right? If that makes sense. It's crazy that we're talking about it like this. And when I was on 107.5 The Game with Tyler, we were talking about it the same way. Like it's crazy to think that they might be too good to lose. So how do you take a loss in games like that? So this is a loss to them, right? I mean, they take the dub, they celebrate what you need, but there is a lot that this team can work on, especially, I mean, Tennessee, you learned a little bit on the road. But yeah, having Cardoso back has been so big for this team. And obviously there's going to be some readjustment, just playing the fluidity of stuff when you have to switch games like that. It's very big. RL says Dawn Staley is now 1 win away from 600 in her coaching career. That is craziness. RL, I appreciate you bringing up that stat. Pretty good one for this Sunday night. But yeah, Jack, Dawn, she doesn't lose. It's ridiculous.
I didn't get to listen to college game today because obviously I was covering a baseball game. But correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but didn't she mention that she thought about retiring or something after this past season? I mean, I kind of get it because it's like you're losing all the freshies, obviously, and you're basically overhauling a roster. And there's a lot of unprovens that we didn't know about at the beginning of the year, and look at them now. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. That was an interesting thing that I saw today that kind of really caught my attention. Like, what if Dawn Staley decided to retire? Like, what next? Hopefully that's a reality that South Carolina doesn't have to face for at least a few more years, right? I think Dawn is 1 win away from 600. I think she's still got some years ahead of her coaching. I think she's accomplished all and more she's had to at South Carolina, but obviously the goal is to keep winning. And I mean, that's kind of been the MO for her since the first title, and I think she's done a really good job this season with turning this group into an undefeated squad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Connor, yeah, we're going to address the men's basketball team in 1 second. Yeah, we're almost done with Dawn Staley, we promise. But yeah, RL she said that she was coming into the season with 5 new starters and hoped they could gel. Yeah, absolutely. So, Dawn Staley is proving why she's the GOAT at this point, right? Taking what she has. And now Malaysia Fulwiley is not a scrub either. Don't get me wrong. Or Raven Johnson, Tahina Paupau are not scrubs. But again, to get a new group to gel like that, like Kim Mulkey is one of the greatest women's basketball coaches of all time, and she is having she had an awfully hard time down in the Bayou to try to get her team to mesh and play together, and especially in the era of NIL, it's really hard. And Dawn seems to do it effortlessly, which is ridiculous. It's so crazy how she does it every single year, and there's got to be some kind of secret in the sauce.
Yeah, there definitely has to be, and Also with this could be a nice transition for men's basketball. Dawn obviously continues to show out and be at these men's games, right? It's I've seen people bringing it up. Like, was it kind of like this when Frank was there? I don't remember it being like this at all, really. Like, I think the support, look, obviously, as we said a few times now, maybe this is the mecca for college basketball right now, right? Maybe not after this week, but for a time, it definitely felt like it. And the support, the women's team, they're there every game. It seems like when Lamont and his guys are playing, and they're into it. And I think it's a good thing to have when both teams are playing at a high level and they're able to go out there and support one another.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. It was kind of the last good breeze over of women's basketball. They have a couple hard games coming up, but again, I think these two games, have certainly righted the ship. You would hope for that squad. All right, so Jack, this men's basketball team has been abysmal this week. They were really, really, really bad against Auburn at Auburn. We kind of swept it under the rug and said, okay, you know what? Maybe this is just them on the road. Auburn hasn't lost two. They've lost 2 home games, I believe, since 2018. Leading up to that point, and yikes, Auburn was bad.
Where do you even begin with this week? All right, let's just address Auburn real quick. It happens, right? It's hard to be a team when you're shooting 60% from the field, right? Auburn just wasn't missing. They hit about every single 3-pointer you could hit. It's even with a hand in the face, playing really good defense for South Carolina, it just wasn't enough. And then even when Auburn was in the paint, driving to the rim, they were hitting these crazy, driving layups and stuff. And it's just like, what do you do with that, right? It's super hard to beat a team when you're shooting that well. But again, it was a 40-point loss. I think, like you said, Joe, we kind of just overlooked it a little bit, thinking, okay, I mean, they got LSU coming into town, they can bounce back, right? And then obviously it's kind of a snowball effect right now. I think the reaction from the fan base, you would think with the way the week is gone, you would think this was a 11-21 squad like last year. Obviously, they're 21-5 now, which is still incredibly good. All their goals are technically still in front of them, but again, you really got to right the ship now, right? It's been a great year. It's been a great year. You're hitting a little bump in the road. What are you going to do next? Are you going to let it continue to snowball until you have a huge snowman, or are you going to let the snow melt and get back to business? That wasn't my best analogy, but I think you get what I'm trying to get at, is that you've still got time to turn this thing around, and we'll see what happens, right? You got, I think, 5 games left in conference play before the SEC tournament. And look, man, I mean, this is kind of like 2016, 15, whatever the year was when they got left out. And then even 2017, when they made their run to the Final Four, they had a little bit of a rough patch at the end of the year. So, look, I mean, I don't think they were going to go this entire season without some sort of adversity. It's in their face now, and it's screaming loud and clear, like, okay, it's time to wake up and turn it around. And you got a really tough 2-game road trip coming up in this upcoming week, or I'm sorry, over the next 2 weeks, where you've really got to get this going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you need to, play out the rest of the season really, really well, right? I think, Jack, at this point, they need to have success in the SEC tournament and win out to still be an automatic bid, right? I mean, I think the 2 losses is one thing, but if you don't win out, then you really need to do some work at the SEC tournament. If you had, won out the rest of your schedule, you were in regardless of your success at the SEC tournament. Now, with 2 bad losses on your resume, it makes things awfully hard to when you're, on the bubble like this, right? They could potentially work themselves into a position where they're back on the bubble. But do I think it's going to happen? No, I think this team rights the ship. But again, it's one of those things. RLS, did the Auburn loss shake USC's confidence and affect them in the LSU game? I think that's one thing. They've been playing quite a lot of basketball, but in a blowout like that, personally, RL, I think it's easier to flush the ones that are so bad. But again, I think, it was LSU. You got a little complacent, right? You thought you were going to go in there and win by, a lot. It wasn't quite the Vanderbilt game, right? They gave you more of a push. It felt a lot like the Georgia game rather than Vandy. And this team just, it felt like they just weren't ready for it. You needed to play really, really good basketball. They thought they were just kind of, going to walk in and walk past LSU. It certainly didn't happen.
No, I mean, look, I think the Auburn game, the good thing is it was a blowout, so they just flushed it and moved on. Yes, did it get a little chippy and choppy in that game? Yeah. Did it seem like South Carolina was kind of on edge at some points? Yes. But from what we've seen all year, it just seemed like they flushed it and moved on. And it looked like early in that LSU game that was kind of going to be the case. Like they were playing a pretty good first half, in my opinion. And then you're cruising going to the second half, and then it's like you got a 16-point lead. There's no way you're going to blow it, right? And Lord behold, they do. And look, it just there's no excuse for that. That's something that can't happen. And I think South Carolina's been a very good team with overcoming these sorts of things. But man, I mean, that was just, I don't want to call it an embarrassing loss, but let's call it for what it is. It kind of was, to be honest. That was a game you shouldn't have lost. When you're looking at the whole bigger picture with March Madness and the AP poll and all that stuff, that's a loss that's, I think it's arguably worse than the Georgia loss, if I'm being quite honest. It's just, that's a game you should have won. You're not up by 16 in the second half and blow that lead. That should not happen.
Yeah, no, I agree, Connor. We hear you. Should have won by a lot. Just blew it. The 16-point second half lead. You need to do better. And again, like I said, they kind of just got complacent, right? We've seen that in the second half. It almost happened with Ole Miss a little bit. You weren't as disciplined, and that's the thing, right? In the SEC, you have to be disciplined 100% of the game, right? You need to bring it 24/7, or else what will happen, or what happened at LSU will happen again. So got to be disciplined. Just got to play better. We see the questions. Martin and RL: is Meechie Johnson injured? Is Meechie Johnson in a slump? I think he's in a slump. We haven't heard anything right from the injury.
So further notice on him: no, he's undergoing concussion evaluations after taking a hit to the head on Saturday. But yeah, let's be real. Outside of one good game, he's been not so good the last few weeks, and it's kind of hard to see at this point because it's like he was getting off to such a good start this year. I thought, he was pretty inconsistent last year, in my opinion. He had a lot of good games, and then it was like he, had like 5 points the next game after a 20-point night. And it's kind of what we're seeing right now. Obviously, I think he's a good enough player to get out of it and get back on track. But the inconsistencies you're seeing out of him are just a little much. And I think something we're not talking about much with this is also Talon Cooper has kind of I don't want to say fallen off lately, but he hasn't been playing like himself lately. And I think with guard play being what it needs to be, it's not looking so great right now at that area. And obviously the forwards I think are playing a lot better. BJ Mack, Colin Murray Boyle, Zach Davis, etc. Miles Studi. But I think with the guards, you really do need Meechie and Talon to step it up and be who they are. Obviously there are more aspects to their games than just scoring points. They do a pretty good job otherwise, but you would obviously like them to shoot a little better to kind of spread the wealth and play better from the outside.
No, absolutely. And I think that's pretty good bow on it. Yeah, Connor, they will not be ranked on Monday, and you don't deserve to be.
Are you sure?
I don't think.
Hold on. So. You're telling me they're going to drop from 11 to out of the rank?
Yeah, losing by 40 out of Auburn. Losing by 1 to LSU.
You have to understand. All right, look, losing by 40 is one thing. However, you're not going to beat a team that is shooting 60. We're talking about Auburn, though. You can't beat a team.
I know we're talking about Auburn, sure, but the LSU loss was at home.
Okay, the LSU. All right, take out the LSU loss for a second. Let's look at just Auburn for a second. Like you're not beating a team that is shooting. They didn't miss, right? And that is why it got to a 40-point loss. It's not because South Carolina played bad or anything. It's literally just because, Auburn was hitting every. How would they be ranked? I don't know. I just feel like I'm not saying they should be or shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I just think going from 11th in the country to out of the rankings would be that's a you got to just think about it. That's a huge. That's a huge.
It's going to be it's close, right? But again, 40 points at Auburn, and then you lose to LSU at home by one.
I know.
You blew a 16-point lead on your home floor.
Yeah, and I'm not defending them. I'm not defending them, but I'm impartial. However, I'm looking at this with just what I'm seeing and what the committee does.
Yeah,
we're gonna
agree to disagree there, big dog.
I know, but that's what it's all about, right? We can talk about this, and it's like,
yeah.
And I think Martin's right. I think they're going to be, if I had to guess, I'm going to go with 23 or 24 right now. I think that's I think just out of the rankings, that feels like a steep. That feels like you put them up so high and then you just drop them after they lost the game. Like, I don't know. It's just,
I think it's close, Jack. It's awfully close because 11 was pretty high up there, and it's just one bad week, right? But again, I think that LSU, it's not as much the Auburn game, right? Because you've had that. You got to wait. Same thing happened to Bama, and you were still ranked as high as you were. So that's understandable. But I think that loss at LSU is gonna knowing the rankings and stuff like that. How long it took South Carolina to get ranked. I'm with Connor here. I think you're out or 25. Lynn says, I do not think we completely drop out. Yeah, it's a very real possibility, but maybe I'm weighing the LSU loss a little bit too much, but I don't know. It's
but at
tough.
the same time, I hate to be blunt. Who cares, to be honest, right? Because I think we all kind of have that misconception that it's literally just a number, right? It doesn't matter.
It really doesn't make any difference where you're selected in the tournament.
When we had our when we had our show 2 weeks ago, on that Monday where they were going to get ranked for the first time since 2017, we talked about it then. Just because they're getting ranked doesn't mean anything, right? As long as you're one of the 64 best teams in mid-March, you're going to the NCAA. That means you're going to the NCAA tournament. And you have a shot at the national championship. So they could be the 64th best team in the country. Okay, that means they have a 1 in 64 chance to win the national championship, which is obviously the goal, right? Okay, you're ranked. Okay, whatever. Even if you fall, whatever happens on tomorrow with the rankings, it is what it is. You move on. You got to just forget about this week. You got to forget about it to an extent, right? You got to learn from what you did wrong this week because there was a lot of bad things that happened this week with South Carolina's basketball. But you got to move on and you got to get ready for this 2-game road trip, man. Going to Ole Miss and Texas A&M, you could easily go 0-2 in my opinion, just because it's hard to go on the road and win in the SEC. Obviously, we saw it at Auburn. Obviously, we saw it at Alabama. We've seen it other times where South Carolina has beaten teams that they should beat on the road. But it hasn't always been easy. So we'll see what happens. But I think I don't think they deserve to fully drop out of the rankings. But at the same time, it shouldn't matter one way or the other. If they get out of the rankings, okay, that's great. It just means they have that chip on their shoulder again, that everyone's counting them out again. And here we go. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's what they need, Joe. Maybe they should be out of the rankings. If that's
exactly. That's what Martin's saying. Absolutely. All right, we'll hit your question, and then I've got some special news to wrap the show up on. We'll get to that. Yeah. But yeah, does having that number beside your name affect any media coverage of your team or network scheduling? I think a little bit. I think it's just kind of a badge of honor of the national media recognizing you. Exactly. Do I think it affects South Carolina's coverage in particular? Not necessarily, because they've already made their splashes, and how they are going to get on the national stage is by winning big games. And the last one, obviously, if you can do something crazy against your next couple, but I think Tennessee's the big one to watch out for when South Carolina is going to start. If they can beat Tennessee again, people are going to keep talking about the Gamecocks. It's going to be pretty good.
It'll be right back to what what it was before.
Very quickly.
Look, it's easy to forget that this team 2 weeks ago was everything was good, right? They were winning games, they weren't losing. Look, it's one bad week. Don't write off South Carolina yet. That would be a mistake. Look, this team is they're 21-5 for a reason. They've had a bad week. Okay, other teams around the country have had bad weeks. Kentucky had a bad week, I think. Not too long ago after losing to South Carolina, and obviously they're getting back on track now. So, look, maybe this is what they need, right? Going into March, people count them out again, and we'll see what happens. I mean, look, there's still a lot of basketball left to play, but I think they've really got the work cut out for them now, right? You only got 2 home games left. You have 3 road games to go in the regular season, and then obviously Nashville, where I think you probably need to win a game or 2 and try to be a top 4 seed. Just keep playing your basketball, but obviously do it a little better and see what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Pretty good rundown of basketball and baseball there. So yeah, I have an announcement. I'm no longer an intern. Still Intern Joe, by the way it's going. But I've been promoted at Gamecock Central. Really excited for a new and expanded role with GC. Shout out to Brian Shoemaker, Mike Uva, Jack Veltri, Wes Mitchell, everyone who's made it possible, all the fun stuff. I'm really, really, really bad at doing this kind of stuff. So I figured I'd just chuck it in at the end here. But thank you to everyone who's, helped out, likes watching all of it. It's been really fun to learn and grow in front of all y'all's eyes. So it has been a blessing, obviously, to do it for Gamecock Central. And then, it's going to be a lot of fun coming up. It's going to be a fun football season, basketball season. Spring football is right around the corner, baseball season as well. So you guys aren't seeing the enemy yet. So it's going to be fun. I appreciate every last one of you guys. So appreciate it. Jack, excited to continue to work with you. Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go.
Fun.
Thank you. Yeah. You can't keep me off the mic forever there. Dude, I'm happy for you, bro.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I had no idea. That's awesome, man. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah.
You do a great job with us, man. And look, I mean, I know we have a lot of members of this team, but everyone is valuable on this team. There's no way we do the job that we do without everyone playing their part and stuff. And obviously, Joe, he does a lot for us. He does video. He's done photography. He's done writing. Yep. This guy, I've known him for a long time now. I love working with him. And Joe, you're doing an awesome job, man. I'm so proud of you. And that is, everyone should be congratulating this guy because he does an awesome job for us. Yeah,
Jack, I appreciate it. And yeah, it'll be fun. A little expanded role, finish up the degree at USC, and then who knows what the future holds. Gotta finish that up. But yeah, no, it'll be fun. And again, shout out to Brian Shoemaker. You're the man. I hope he's somewhere watching this warm in his walkthrough with Intern Joe hoodie. So I appreciate you and everyone in Gamecock Central. I appreciate everyone. It's been a dream to work for and work with everyone. So and that's a pretty good way to close this week's edition of the walkthrough. I'm your host, as always, Intern Joe Machika. That is Jack Veltri. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you this week.